this is, I think, the lesson of the Tunsil trade is like, it's hard to find number one guys in free agency. If you want those, you're going to have to draft them or trade for them. 0980. It's a vibe check Tuesday. So how do you feel about what Adam Peters and company have done so far? Let's get things started with Mark and Laurel. Mark, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hi, Craig. How are you?
Doing well, Mark.
Okay, great. You know, it's not over yet, but I thought we'd be busier. I love the Tunsil trade. We gave up a lot to get him, but I mean, he's a Hall of Fame. He's a Hall of Fame if his career keeps going. I mean, to me, I love it. He solidified the line, and when Cosby comes back, we'll be a dominant offensive line, and we got to protect Jaden. That was the whole point. Left tackles don't come around, so to me, that was the most important pickup. You know, your quarterback and your left tackle, you got to protect him. Kinlaw, it's a reach, especially for the money. Most draft pundits, most experts, so-called talking heads, are down on it. You know, as far as the risk reward, I think it's an Adams Peters decision because of his knowledge of him in Frisco. So I think he thinks he can get the best out of him. I hope so, because right now, I got to go with Peters' decision, but if I had to do it, I would have never picked him up. But, you know, Peters knows him.
And that's the thing, right, Mark? I'll let you keep going in a second, but that's the thing that I'm agreeing with you. I also struggle with this because I think it seems like there's a tie to someone on every one of these guys, and I'm like, man, like that means you have more information, but are you being biased towards familiarity? It's the thing that I talk about with fans. Like, just because you've heard of the guy doesn't mean that he's actually better than the guy that you haven't heard of. And that, I wonder. That said, I think one thing the staff has done really well, and Dan Quinn does really well, is finding the right roles for guys, which is part of the reason why so many players had career years here, like role players that were maybe better role players. It wasn't like they turned into stars, but they had better production than they had previously. And I'm certainly hoping that Kinlaw is one of those guys. And I kind of think that he's going to play in some 3-down packages with, you know, the other 2 defensive tackles where he can play more of an edge. I think that, you know, last year they used that package with Payne and Allen on the edge. At times, I think he is probably better suited for some of that than he is a traditional defensive tackle, like he's been used a lot in his career. So I am intrigued by the Kinlaw signing. If they use him the way that the other teams, like San Francisco and New York did, and expect it to just be better, like that feels silly to me. But I don't think I would be surprised if that's the plan. Now, whether that's worth $15 million, I don't know. I have a hard time judging these markets because there's just so much cap increase that adjusting our brains to what a $15 million player is hard. But I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, I guess, is where I land on that. And it sounds like that's kind of where you are too. It's a big wait and see.
He's earned the benefit of the doubt. This is going to be Adam Peters' first scrutinized pick because it's a decent amount of money and he had a whole lot of cap space, and this is who he chose. So yeah, I think people are going to look at this. Chin, I hated to lose Chin. Thought he did a good job. I think there's a hole there. I heard what you said yesterday about we don't know, you know, Butler and the other kids and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Right now it's a hole. I still think we're going to pick up somebody. And we may even use our draft choice because I like the boy out of Georgia going late. So if he's available, I definitely want him.
Yeah.
So that's all I got to say. How you feel about it?
Yeah, no, I think that all makes sense. You got Malachi Starks, the kid you're talking about at Georgia. Imanawari from South Carolina is interesting in kind of that 29 range if he wagons up there. Then again, after the combine he might not make it out of the lottery, if you will. But they also signed Will Harris today. And I'll tell you, Mark, I watched a little Will Harris tape. I'm not going to tell you he's a world beater, but I'm not going to tell you I don't like him. So the Chin thing is interesting to me, but I definitely think they're already starting to make moves there. Thanks for the call. And I also don't think that they're potentially done there. Like, I know Simmons said that he would like to be in Washington. The former Denver safety was in Atlanta last year. They do a really good job of packaging their stuff on the back end. And so if they can get a package where Will Harris is doing what he needs to do, if you get a package where Percy Butler's in a good position for him, where Tyler Owens, Jeremy Reeves is still around. Like, they have a bunch of bodies. The question, can any of them really kind of elevate to a higher level next to Quan Martin? But Will Harris is a super versatile player. Like that dude lined up in the post. He lined up underneath a lot in the box. Like he plays a lot like Jeremy Chin in that way. I think he's a better coverage player than Chin. He'll be physical and hit. He'll go up and support the run. He was sometimes playing outside corner based off alignment where, teams are doing some funky stuff, and he's able to match it on the outside. I saw a snap against Dallas where he'd match it up against CeeDee Lamb and, runs with him. Not that I'd want to do that on the regular, but, he did it. So I like the Will Harris signing today on the safety front. That doesn't mean that there aren't holes or that they shouldn't, if their best player available at 29 or wherever else is a safety, that they shouldn't go in that direction. But that's definitely Will Harris is a good floor to have at the safety position opposite of Quan Martin. Let's go to Aveen in DC. Aveen, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig. Very enjoyable offseason so far. It's probably unhealthy how much I've been checking, Reddit, Blue Sky, Twitter, refreshing. I feel like a lot of our signings last year came in the 5 and 6 o'clock hours, so who knows?
Hey, I'll take it for this show, that's for sure.
But this Harris signing, like you were saying, it feels a lot like the Chin signing, where it was somebody under the radar, not somebody I really heard of, not somebody you really saw on people's big boards, but you see him and you're doing all this research right when he gets signed, and you're looking at his highlights and you're like, oh yeah, this seems like a Dan Quinn type of player. So that feels like a good signing. But for the positions of need, I feel like, it's edge and corner. And, I'm hoping from this offseason we can get 2 starting level players from those positions. And like you said, you don't want to go into the draft, feeling like you need to pick somebody to fill in a hole. So, I'm kind of hoping we can feel okay with what we do to address edge and corner. And, just looking at the edge positions, I'm looking at the athletic big board, and then you look at the PFF grading, and it doesn't match up. People's gradings of players are all over the place. I look at for edge, Charles Amenahu and Dennis Gardick, they're low on the athletic board, but then you look at their PFF grading, it's pretty good. So I'm like, okay, maybe we can get some people like that who are more, bargain value signings who still have some good football left to play. So I want to know what you think about those type of players, edge signings and corners who might be more under the radar. And then really fast, just that receiver. I would be totally fine if we brought back, Noah Brown and all that. It seems like we're fine there, but it also kind of seems like, we're the type of team that a veteran wide receiver would really want to play for, end his career playing with Jaden Daniels. Maybe we can get good value signing there. Maybe a vet like Keenan Allen or something for a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
Just want to know what you think about that.
Yeah, I'm going to let you do the old hang up and listen, but I think those are great questions, and you make a couple great points in there, so thanks, Aveen, for the call. One, I think beauty is in the eye of the beholder on all of this stuff, and whether it's media types of The Athletic and PFF, or I've got the 33rd team's free agency tracker up because they have a very, very extensive list. I've been using NFL.com, Greg Rosenthal, he's got a great top 101 list that he's updating constantly, and his I know his 101st player is Nick Chubb, for instance. That might be 30 on someone's list. Someone else might be like, I believe in Nick Chubb. I think he's a great person. He works really hard. He's going to get back to form. And if he can stay healthy, finally, he'll get back to being a 1,000-yard back. And someone might have him as the 30th best player. That's how this stuff goes. And I think also not just when you're making a generic big board, that's one thing, but each team has a different set of criteria on and off the field. How much will they tolerate of off the field nonsense? How much silliness will they tolerate from a player in their locker room versus what kind of scheme fit is he? What traits does he bring? How hard does he play? Some teams are like, man, his good is good. I don't really care about the bad. Some teams are like, nope, floor's way too low. We can't tolerate that in our locker room, or that's not how we play. And that's how DQ is. You're out there, you're busting your ass, or DQ's going to bench you. And so the lists are different for everyone. But I think Aveen has identified the 3 positions where I am most intrigued for them moving forward. I think corner is the hardest one based off what I'm looking at right now. Because the names that I think were potential needle movers are pretty much off the board. Byron Murphy goes back to the Vikings, Carlton Davis to the Patriots, Travarius Ward to the Colts, Paulson Adebo to the Giants, DJ Reed to the Lions, Brandon Stevens even going to the Jets. So that leaves you with some guys who have either kind of fallen off in their careers or are just flat out old by NFL standards. And again, I cannot stress how much it pains me to call 34-year-olds and 33-year-olds old as someone who is now 35 years old as a human being and still feels young, but I don't have to play NFL football 17 times a year. So the biggest name left is Darius Slay. And I would absolutely be interested in bringing Darius Slay here, getting him with a chip on his shoulder, seeing if you can get one good year out of him, and then hopefully draft a corner that can replace him in the long term. Stephon Gilmore, that never happened last year when he was a free agent forever. I think that's probably a no-go. Asante Samuel Jr. is interesting. Guy that obviously with the name because of his dad and was a high draft pick, whatever. People were in on him initially, but hasn't really had a very good career. Rasul Douglas has been around forever. I think he's probably more of a nickel. Bradbury's been, I don't say he's been washed for a couple years. Kendall Fuller's a free agent again. I know that'll excite some people, mostly Hokie fans, but I'm not really interested in that. Mike Hilton, he hits. He can play some nickel for you. Kind of a safety corner nickel hybrid guy, but I don't know that that's what they want. And same thing, like Jonathan Jones, like he was really good for a while and then hasn't been good. And so Jeff Okuda, former top 5 pick, could they coach him up? Probably not. So the corner market's the one that I'm a little scared about, but I also feel like that's the one I'm most comfortable about having a pretty good player available in the draft. I don't think there's there's a clump of corners that are somewhere between the 25th and 40th best player. There's like 4 or 5 guys in that range on most draft boards. I think you can get one in the draft. I also don't want to go into the draft knowing I need a starter at any position. Nevertheless, that one. Edge, there's a couple more options. Edge, I mean, you still have Azeez Ojulari out there, who's only 25 years old and has been pretty good for the Giants. Again, not earth-shattering, but he's been pretty good. And then you also have some veterans. You have DeMarcus Lawrence, who obviously is tremendously familiar to DQ. You have Amenahu, who's, Logan said it really well, he's a bit of a silly goose. But he also had some serious off-the-field stuff. He was arrested on a misdemeanor domestic violence charge a couple years ago and has had an ACL injury. So it's kind of a no-go for me for multiple reasons. You've got Fowler, if he'll stop tweeting. Zadarius Smith is still out there. The Rams released Leonard Floyd today. Matthew Judon is still out there, who got pretty good draft return last season when he was traded from the Patriots to the Falcons. So, there's a bunch of dudes out there that are professional edge players that can be in the rotation for Washington. And there's guys with a little more pass rush juice. There's guys with a little bit more solid edge play, like in terms of setting the edge against the run. There's younger guys like Ojulari, who's 25. There's older guys like Lawrence, who I believe is 33. There's guys that are kind of in that 27, 28-year-old range that Adam Peters seems to really like signing free agents in. So there is a lot of options at those positions, none of whom are going to be your number one. But I don't know, and this is, I think, the lesson of the Tunsil trade, is it's hard to find number one guys in free agency. If you want those, you're going to have to draft them or trade for them. And then, Leonard Floyd's gone. He just signed with the Falcons. That's per Adam Schefter. Right on cue. And then the last one, real quickly, wide receiver. You got Amari Cooper, who I think is interesting. I don't think Keenan Allen does it for me. Lockett is interesting. Elijah Moore's only 25 years old. He's interesting. Robert Woods is out there. Mike Williams. So there's some vets. Juju, Nick Westbrook-Akine's got a little speed. I think the hard part about the receiver market is there just aren't a ton of dudes with a ton of vertical speed pop. MVS is out there, and I know MVS isn't going to get anyone excited, but he's the kind of guy that's got a little bit of vertical speed. I think this is why they're bringing in Michael Gallup, the former Cowboy who retired and is now unretiring, for a visit. He's still only 29 years old. But he, at his peak, was a really, really big-time speed receiver. They need vertical speed in this offense to complement Terry's vertical speed. They have the underneath part in Debo. I think there's a couple other guys that could have that. I look at a guy like Rondale Moore, who was with Cliff in Arizona. He's interesting to me as a weapon type, but has more vertical speed down the field potentially. So there's still some receivers out there that the offense, Tim Patrick was good last year in Detroit. There are guys out there that the offense could make them into useful players. But I do think your top targets next year are already on the roster, and those are going to be Terry, Zach, and Debo Samuel. And then we'll see if Ben Sinnott develops, and we'll see who else they ultimately sign. And then hopefully Luke McCaffrey takes a step as well.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.